Welcome to the virtual open day for Oriental Studies at Hartford College. My name is Bjarke Frelsvik. I'm the tutor for Japanese in Hartford, and I specialize in Japanese linguistics, and I teach Japanese linguistics and classical Japanese language, as well as Japanese grammar. And with me today, I have a colleague of mine, Dr. Jiun Kjær, and one of our students who've just finished the third year. Jiun, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, very welcome to all of you. My name is Jiun Kjær, and I teach Korean linguistics. So I specialize Korean language and linguistics, which you start if you choose in third year and fourth year. And yeah, very, it would be nice to see you all later. Imogen.
Hi, my name's Imogen, and I'm in my third year studying Japanese at Hartford College.
Great, thank you. So first thing I should say is that at Hartford we accept applications and we have students for Japanese and Chinese amongst the Oriental Studies subjects. We don't accept students for other courses within Oriental Studies. So if you're interested in Arabic or Sanskrit or Turkish, you can stop watching if you're not interested in Japanese and Chinese. Those are the two subjects we offer at Hartford College. The courses in Japanese and Chinese at Oxford are structurally very similar. I know the Japanese course better than I know the Chinese course, but I'll explain briefly the structure of those two courses. They're both four-year courses, of which 1 year is spent abroad in either Japan or China. The first year of the course is spent in Oxford with a lot of language teaching, a lot of language classes. I think about 10 hours a week of intensive language classes, getting a very strong foundation in Japanese or Chinese, depending on which language you study, of course. And in addition, we have a part of the course which is very important, which is nothing to do with language, which is something we call the East Asia Servic course, which gives an overview over East Asian history and culture. Jiun, do you want to say a few words about that?
Yes, so in the first year you will have this East Asia Survey course, which you will learn about China, Japan, and Korea, the brief history and culture related course that also whether you choose to do Chinese or Japanese, you learn together. And this is a lecture course, and this will run for a whole term, and you will learn about the very much pre-modern and modern history of and the culture of this East Asia in very much in general. And this will be a thing that you will attend as a lecture for the first term.
Yeah, and those lectures, I think they're about three lectures a week during each of the three terms. Imogen, I know it's been a while, but what do you remember of the first year at Oxford? And also, you hadn't done any Japanese when you came up, did you? Had you?
Yeah, I'd done some Japanese before I came, but not a lot. Definitely less than some people. I think, yeah, the first term does have a lot of contact hours, and I guess it differs from other courses in some ways in that. But I think in some ways it's also quite useful having quite a structured start to university, because I think often the transition from school to university can be kind of big on its own. So having a lot of contact hours helps you organize your time more easily, I think, at the start of a degree. And it means that it means you get to grips with the language very quickly and cover a lot of grammar in just the first 8 weeks of the year.
And I guess that's another way of saying it's going to be very busy, and it's a lot of hard work, but it pays off, and you actually progress from wherever you are with the language, whether you come with a little bit of Chinese, no Japanese, or a lot of that. You progress a lot during the first 8 weeks, and that continues for the next two terms as well. So once you've completed the first year, here in Oxford, you will sit an exam or set of exams at the end of that first year, which you'll have to pass to progress in the course. And that's never a problem for Hartford students because they work very hard and they do very well in the exams. Then you go to abroad, you go to Japan or China in the second year, spend all of the second year in that country. And that's a big change from being in Oxford, of course. And for many people, it's the first time they travel to the Far East. That really is a big difference from living in Oxford. But it's very rewarding. I know that, again, as I said earlier, the Japanese course better than the Chinese course, but in both courses you have, again, quite a lot of language classes at a university in Japan. If you study, well, in Japan you study at Kobe University, and in China you study at Beijing University. And so you're taught by professional language teachers in those countries, and in addition you can attend other lectures at the universities. But of course, a very big part of the year abroad is that you get an opportunity to live in the country whose language and culture you're studying. And Imogen, I know you have fond memories of the year abroad.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, the year abroad is a really amazing experience and a real highlight of the course, I think. Kobe is a really lovely city to be in. I think it's just the right size for a year abroad in that there's lots going on, and it's close to a lot of other places like Osaka and Kyoto, but it's small enough that you can really get to know it and feel at home there quite quickly. And I think you could just have so many chances to visit places and really experience things that you've learned about in the first year or heard about, and kind of get a real taste of life in Japan and put all the language into practice.
And you don't get homesick?
Maybe sometimes, but like I think Kobe is quite an international city, so there's also a lot of, I think one of the things we found useful was going to the international supermarket and buying foods that we miss from home. And also the university is really, both Oxford and Kobe are really supportive, and you have a lot of contact with people there to help you if you're having any difficulties.
Yes, I think almost everybody finds that year abroad a really enriching and broadening experience. And at the end of that, you come home to Oxford and you do the third and fourth year of the course, which are very, very different from the first year and also from the second year. There are no exams in the third year. So all the exams that will examine everything you've learned since finishing the first year will take place at the end of the fourth year. So you're working towards that. You will continue to do quite a lot of language work, working on modern Japanese or modern Chinese language. You won't have as many contact hours. You'll have about 4 hours a week of Japanese or Chinese language during the third and fourth years. Plus a number of other types of teaching that reinforce language. You'll start doing translation work from Japanese or Chinese into English. And you'll start on the Japanese course to learn classical Japanese, which is a compulsory part of the course. It's something that is, it's again, like everything, hard work, but it's very enjoyable in the sense that you get access to a vast amount of texts, both literary and non-literary, written in pre-modern Japanese. So Imogen, you've just finished the third year, and I have a feeling that you quite like doing classical Japanese, is that right? Yeah,
I did, and it was one of the reasons I actually wanted to come to Oxford, actually, because I think there aren't that many undergraduate courses in Japanese in the UK where you can study historic forms of the language. And I think it means that you're able to, well, firstly access, like you said, a lot of, like a large range of texts that you wouldn't be able to with just modern language. But you also then get to see how the modern language has formed and how different things have affected it linguistically as well, which I think is really interesting.
Hmm. One of the differences between the Japanese course and the Chinese course is that in the Chinese course, they learn classical Japanese, not from the third year, but actually from the first year. And so for the Chinese course, classical Chinese is a part of the course right from the outset. And that's because the classical language has an enormous influence still today on the Chinese language. You will also study options, so content subjects, which you choose yourself from quite a wide range, from Japanese or Chinese linguistics, modern literature, classical literature, and also economics, society, anthropology, history, of course, both pre-modern and modern history. You will do a total of 5 options, 3 in the third year and 2 in the fourth year. And each of them will be a term's worth of content work where you will write essays and have tutorials with tutors such as myself if you're studying Japanese linguistics or certain aspects of pre-modern Japanese language, with Dr. Kier if you're studying Korean linguistics, and so on. That is a very important part of the course. That's where you both use your general intellectual ability, but also your language skills, because some of the texts you'll be reading for content, not for language learning purposes, will be written in Japanese or Chinese, depending on which course you're on. And that really is where you bring together all the language you've learned, all the basic knowledge you've acquired about the history and culture, and do quite specialized in-depth work on some aspect or aspects of the country you're studying. Imogen, is there any of the options you did this past year that you would like to just very briefly talk about?
Yes, so should I talk about Old Japanese maybe?
Mm-hmm.
With that. So this term, been studying a special text option where you primarily working with text and translation on Old Japanese, so the language of the Nara period. And so that's involved us looking at both prose and poetry written in the language of that time, and then discussing the linguistic features of it, the unique writing systems it has, and producing our own translations as well.
So that's one example of the kind of option work you can do. Now, another thing you can do is, instead of doing 5 options, you can do 2 options, but instead of the 3 options, study an additional language. And those languages can be from Japanese, if you're studying Chinese, they can be from Japanese, Korean, or Tibetan. If you're studying Japanese, they can be from Chinese, Korean, or Tibetan. And Jian, do you want to say something about the additional language options that we have?
Yes, we had, as Bjarke explained, you can choose Japanese and Chinese. With Chinese, if you're studying Chinese, you can do Japanese, but also you can choose Korean. So in the third year, you will start Korean if you choose to do Korean, and in third year you will do. You don't have to, we don't require any sort of Korean knowledge before, so you will start from the alphabet and very basics. So you will start 2 hours a week Korean, and Dr. Ji, another instructor, will go through the Korean language part. Most of the Korean teaching in Oxford would probably most likely to focus on reading and reading parts, so you will be able to read newspapers and articles and so on. So third year, you will basically run the Korean language, and also you will start doing some tutorials and lectures on Korean linguistics and histories, and we'll start writing essays on that. And the fourth year, you will do text reading with me and Dr. Louise, either on there's topics cover modern or pre-modern linguistic part and the history related parts, but we'll basically read text and translate together. And also there will be some essay writings on, again, as I said, like linguistic part or culture or history part. So that would be basically what you're going to do in the 4th year. But so third year will be mostly language learning, and 4th year we will do more content related to lectures and translation. So yeah. So
thank you. Finally, what you will in the mainly the 4th year, but already beginning of the 3rd year, will prepare a dissertation, an undergraduate dissertation, which is a quite large piece of independent research. You will write a dissertation of up to 15,000 words, which is about 50 pages. So it's a long piece where you can really write about, well, just about anything you're interested in, which is academically valid. So you can do specialized research using your language skills, using the skills you learned in the option tutorials you had, and so on, and produce an independent piece of writing. So that's the overall structure of the course. The highlights are lots of intensive language teaching in small groups. Our classroom groups are about 7, 8, 9 at the max people with one teacher. We have professional native language teachers for all the language teaching. You'll do option work, specialized option work with specialists who are experts in their fields, ranging from linguistics, literature, history, society, and so on. You'll do an undergraduate dissertation in the 4th year, and you will have the option of doing a subsidiary language instead of some of the other options. That, I think, is what you'll do in Oxford, and then there's the year abroad, of course. And I guess some of you may wonder and be asking, why do we have the year abroad in the 2nd year and not in the 3rd year? Most universities, which have 4-year courses, have the year abroad in the 3rd year. We have it in the 2nd year because we aim to teach you enough Japanese in the course of the 1st year so that you can actually function and benefit from being in Japan during the 2nd year. And you then have 2 years after you come back with really very high level of Japanese or Chinese language to use those language skills to do interesting content work on the language or country that you're studying. Imogen, do you have any thoughts on the timing of the year abroad?
Yeah, I think when I was looking at what universities to apply to, the year abroad being in 2nd year Oxford kind of put me off a bit. I was quite concerned it seemed too early, but having done it, I'm totally convinced that is a better way of doing it. I think the university prepares you in 1st year for going, so it doesn't feel so daunting. And I think also because everyone goes together, it's a lot more structured in that sense, so it's not such a daunting prospect. And then having come back and having improved my language skills so much from 2nd year, being able to sort of read academic texts or other texts actually in Japanese that contribute to multiple options, I think is a real benefit.
Yes, we have found it works very well to have the year abroad in the 2nd year. Now, I'm sure that people watching you watching this, you will have questions about the course, and you can go to the Oriental faculty website and find the handbook for Japanese for more detail about the different options and the structure of the course. But I hope this has given an overview. We also would like to talk to you a little bit about 2 things, namely applying to Oxford and admissions, the admissions process once you have applied. The only thing I really want to say about applying is that you have to write a personal statement for your UCAS form when you apply. I know that a lot of effort and also anxiety is invested in writing the personal statement. The advice I would give you when considering what to put in your personal statement is to be as honest and straightforward as possible. Don't try to second guess what we might want to read. Don't try to impress unnecessarily. I'm sure you are interesting people, and that is what you should try to portray. You should write honestly about why you're interested in studying Japanese or Chinese. You should not try to make up reasons that you think sound better than the real reasons. If anime is what sparked your interest in studying Japanese, then that's absolutely fine. That's the case for many of our students. You should feel free to include information about outside of school activities. It's not going to make any difference, to be honest, whether you're very good at playing the flute or whether you've done the Duke of Edinburgh for an Oxford application, but you should feel free to include it if you want, but that's not what's going to persuade us one way or the other. The personal statements will be read by people like me and Dr. Kier, by academics. They will not be read to any great extent by admissions administrators. They'll be read by us, by the people who will be teaching you. And so it's important that you try to portray who you are so we can get a sense of that. Once you've sent in your application, the next thing that happens is that most people who apply to Japanese or Chinese are invited to come here for interviews, the famous admissions interviews. And they are probably daunting in the sense that you will meet the people who will be making decisions about whether you should be offered a place or not, and you'll talk to them. But we try to make the interviews as stress-free as possible. You will each have at least 2 interviews, one done by the Faculty of Oriental Studies, where you will be interviewed by teachers there, and one done by Hertford College, where you'll be interviewed by Dr. Kier and myself, and possibly 1 or 2 other people. The interviews will be pretty similar, those 2 interviews. They will both last about 25 minutes, and you will be asked questions that relate to your UCAS form in the sense of relating to the subjects that you're studying at school and to what you put on your personal statement. You will not be asked trick questions or the kind of Oxford interview questions that we sometimes read about in the interview. You're not going to be asked what it feels to be what it feels like to be an apple or anything like that. Imogen, how do you remember your interviews? Do you remember your interviews?
Yeah, it was quite a long time ago now, but I remember them as being quite enjoyable, actually. Like, obviously it is stressful, but I think it's also quite exciting, because I think particularly with Japanese or Chinese, where you probably weren't studying it at school or being around people who were interested in it, I think the chance to actually suddenly be able to talk to someone who knows so much about it is actually really exciting, and I quite enjoyed it. Yes,
we're hoping that the experience of having the interviews is going to be interesting. Finally, I think we should wrap up soon, because as you can tell, we're quite taken with talking about our subject, so we just rattle on. But we should say a few words about Hertford, I feel, before we conclude. We've talked about the courses that you would be applying to, not so much about Hertford. Hertford is located right in the middle of Oxford, across the street, literally, from the main university library, the Bodleian Library. Well, I guess all colleges are small in one sense or another. Hartford is small in the sense that it's a tightly knit community with friendly people. We like to think, and I think that is true, that it is a friendly and welcoming college. We're therefore very keen to attract applications from anyone who feel they would like to study at Oxford. We're not posh, we're very down to earth, and we welcome anyone. Imogen, is there anything you want to say? You've been a student here now for a bit more than 3 years, and I think you have a far better idea than I or Dr. Kier would have about what it's like to be a student of Japanese or Chinese in Hartford.
Yeah, I think Hartford's, because they take quite a lot of students for Japanese or Chinese here, that there's a good community within the subject. We have some events so you can meet people in other years or graduate students as well. And then in terms of practical things as well, the library is well stocked with all the books you'll need in the first year. And it's also well located for the department building, and it's not far to go to the Bodleian Japanese library as well. So it's a good choice for Japanese or Chinese.
Thank you very much for watching this. We are very much looking forward to reading your applications. We hope you will apply, and we hope to see you in person at some point.